Terry Brooks has thrilled readers for decades with his powers of imagination and storytelling. He's the author of more than 30 books, most of which have been New York Times bestsellers. And of course, among these are the fan-favorite, wondrous Magic Kingdom of Landover series, chronicling the adventures of a trial lawyer turned fantasy kingdom ruler. Yes. And also, in 1977, the same year as Star Wars, Terry published The Sword of Shannara, which was an instant hit, remaining on the New York Times bestseller list for 5 months. Over the years, his Shannara series has sold at least 50 million copies worldwide, making it one of the most popular fantasy epics of all time. Now, that's okay. It's good to be a fan. Decades later, Terry is still publishing bestsellers, and now soon, MTV will be joining the party, premiering the Shannara Chronicles, with the first season of the TV show based on the second book of the series, The Elfstones of Shannara. Terry Brooks lives with his wife, Judine, in the Pacific Northwest, but right now, do you know where he is? He's right here at Comic-Con. Terry Brooks, everyone!
Where's the rest of the panel? I was told there would be other people.
It's supposed to be exciting times. Hey, there's a drought on, don't you know?
Here, Will.
There you go. We'll leave one for Elijah.
Yeah, there you go.
So it must be an exciting time for you with this series and everything. But
Why, yes.
But actually, you've been coming to Comic-Con since almost the beginning, right?
Yeah, I think probably the early 90s was the first. I was one of the first writers here, maybe the first writer, and Del Rey Publishing was the first publisher to be invited or to get themselves invited back when it wasn't thought that this was a particularly interesting venue for book publishers. But as we all know, that's all changed.
Well, how has it changed? Aside
That's your line. You have to pick up on your line when it's time. Okay, now you talk.
I see. So, and what are some of these changes that you've experienced over the years?
Well, crowds. I mean, you go out there now, and there are a lot of people out there. You used to be able to move up and down those aisles without too much trouble. You can't do that anymore. There's people everywhere, and they're in the way. I'm not fond of that, no.
Not fond of people.
Well, people are all right, but, when you're a writer, you tend to work alone anyway, so most of the time you have a certain side of you that prefers not to have too many people around. Talk to my wife about it. She can tell you.
Oh, I'm not getting in between that.
Okay.
But, I think we want to talk about the series. We want to talk about the show, but I'm really interested to talk about you and how you, and the beginnings. And how was your first moment of storytelling where you became a storyteller?
See, now this is the trouble with young people. They think you can remember these things, but they are wrong. I cannot remember my first moment of storytelling. It probably, I'm sure my parents read to me as a child. That might have been part of it. I started writing young, I can tell you that. I was writing books, not books, but short stories when I was 10. And pretty much knew at 10 years of age that being a writer was what I wanted to do. I really loved it. I loved the process. I liked the puzzle-solving aspect of putting words together. And I was lucky enough to get published at 13, which then you're sort of bit by the bug. That's what happened to me. I was living in Illinois at the time where I grew up, and in Illinois, all school children in the 40s and 50s had to write some kind of an essay on Lincoln almost every year. So I wrote a story about Lincoln, and it got published in this little bitty local historical journal, and I knew I was on my way, and it only took me 20 more years before I got anything else published.
he wasn't a axe-wielding vampire slayer, because
No, he wasn't in those days, but we all get rehabbed. Our histories get reinvented, and this is what happened to Abe Lincoln. My education was sorely missing. It was sort of like watching Noah. Have you seen Noah? I didn't understand the Bible at all until I saw Noah and realized how much I had never seen before that was true about, stone angels and all kinds of stuff, and dinosaurs, I think. I don't know. Anyway, so that's how we find out these things, is time goes by and the stories get rewritten, and as they do, we learn the truth about things kind of over and over.
So I just want to go back and say that Terry Brooks said I was young, and that's like the nicest thing anyone said to me ever. I'm old as...
Well, comparatively, anyway.
But you've actually talked about one of your inspirations in writing the Shannara series as being William Faulkner.
Yeah, it was. That I know people say, what? William Faulkner? Who even reads Faulkner?
What?
What? Everybody thinks it was Tolkien, but it really wasn't in the beginning. It was at the end of the day, but at the beginning of the day, it was European adventure story writers, and then I was doing a lot of work on the William Faulkner series for English classes, and I got very interested in this whole Yoctopanafa County, Mississippi concept and the generations that grew up there, and the struggle between the poor trailer trash and the rich landed gentry. And I liked that, and I liked the fact that secrets within families destroyed the families. This is time-honored themes. So I got very interested in doing that, and I thought, I kind of want to do that. But of course, being a lazy child, I didn't want to do any research on it, because research involved, going to the library and reading books and things. And I just wanted to read fiction. So that's why I thought that the Tolkien format worked well, because it's turned out that nobody really actually can check on you when you write about elves. Because you just say, well, I don't know where you got your information, but these are my elves, and this is how my elves work. And nobody's ever been able to get past that. It worked quite well.
So, are there...
No fact-checking, no lawsuits, none of that.
Well, elves have their fans over the years. Have people actually come up to you and say, elves don't do that or this or the other thing, and you have to make a defense?
No, nobody's ever done that.
So don't start.
No, don't start, because I have this microphone and I'll use it. I know a lot of writers that write in the elf lands, and they have their elves, and I think they feel possessive about their elves in the same way that I do, and I don't question them. So I think they feel it's kind of a quid pro quo. Yeah, with regard to how they want to respond to me.
It's one of them Latin-y, lawyerly things that...
that all that lawyer stuff really helps you out in the end of the day. You can learn a lot of things that are very useful for argumentative purposes.
Is that... So is that the main thing that you've taken from your career as a lawyer?
Well, I don't know. I tell everybody the same thing, that I learned two important things while I was in school. One was how to type. Back in the days when we typed. Now it would be keyboarding, right? So I learned how to keyboard, and the other thing was I did a lot of speechifying, because I was a speechifying, mouthy kind of kid. So I got thrown into a lot of debate and speech classes and extracurricular things where I was on my feet learning to speak. And that carries through when you're a trial lawyer, because obviously you can't be a trial lawyer unless you get up on your feet and address the judge or the jury or whoever you're going to address, and then put together a cogent argument. Very useful for a writer to have to know how to do that.
To construct a story, a compelling narrative.
Compelling narrative, exactly right. Because really, that's what trials are all about. They're a compelling narrative. And if you don't believe this, sit down on one sometime. You have to reinvent things.
The difference, I guess, being that you get, as a writer, you get to construct your own characters, whereas in a jury situation, you've got the characters that that you're handed.
This is a problem. Frequently, you get people when you're a lawyer who are not actually defendable, and they won't do what you tell them to. I can remember very clearly when one of the first trials I did was a theft of railroad brass off of a rail yard by a couple guys out of Skokie, Illinois, and I begged them not to get on the witness stand, because the minute they opened their mouths, you knew they were crooks. You knew they were. And I knew they had done it, but they weren't admitting it, of course. They said, no, they found it. Yeah. That was a bad defense. That's a really bad defense. Well, anyway, they got on the witness stand, and that was the end of that. So I think really it's much better if you work in your own world. I have a T-shirt that my daughter Lisa gave me that says, I live in my own little world, but they know me there. I like that. I think it's probably true. I know my own characters very well, and we communicate quite well, and mostly they do what I tell them to, and can't say that for my kids, but you know. Sorry, guys. They're out there somewhere. Yep, there's one now.
Well, I guess then I should ask for future reference. What if that's not a good defense for if I mean anyone ever finds themselves on trial? I didn't do it, or I just found it. What would be a good one? I'm asking for a friend.
Well, no,
honest.
I'm sure you are. The answer is you don't go on the witness stand. You don't have to testify against yourself. Remember that?
Thank you. Fifth Amendment.
Fifth Amendment. You take the Fifth Amendment. You don't even have to take the Fifth Amendment. You just don't get up there and say anything. You just sit there and let your very able trial attorney beat up on the other side sufficiently that they don't have a case anymore, which I had done. At any rate, that's all over with.
That's right. It's good that you're not carrying this with you after all these
No,
years.
I don't. I try not to carry grudges at all.
But
after today.
that's a very interesting joke, Mr. Brooks. Let's unpack that a little.
Yeah, right.
So MTV.
I've heard of it.
So what has the process been like? How's it been seeing your characters take on this new life in this series?
Well, you know, I don't think anybody believed that it was a good idea for me to go to MTV and make this deal, because I think they felt that MTV didn't have a track record that was the same as some other channels that we could talk about. But as a matter of fact, I felt that they were exactly the right choice. And my experience in this has been great. We have a saying amongst us writers that having a book made into a movie or TV show is like having your child kidnapped by a cult. And we're very serious about this saying. But I will say that in this case, that was not at all true. I had a really fine relationship with everybody involved in this program. You know, and I spent time over in New Zealand when they were filming it, and had a chance to get to know the actors and many of the people on the crew. It was, you know, you can go into a setting like that cold, and you know right away whether people are getting along. You know, how is this going? Is this just a business, let's get this over with kind of thing? And it wasn't at all like that. It was very camaraderie. There was a lot of camaraderie, rather, and it was very much of a family feel to it. Everybody talked about how great the actors were, how much they helped each other, what a good relationship they had with the crew and so forth. That's a very good sign. I remember the first time I met the writers, I flew to LA to sit down with them and see if we could see what it was like across the table, kind of thing. And I knew right away they were the right people. I knew right away because their response to things was just exactly the way I wanted it to be. They were not, invested in themselves so much that they wouldn't respond to something I didn't like, and they were very, very good about talking things through, and that turned out to be true all the way through the process. So that was good. I mean, I just think I've been very lucky that way. And this is probably where I should mention Dan Farah. Dan, are you out there? Okay, so here's the thing about Dan Farah. He is out there. Now, Dan Farah is the guy who took this project from me, cold, as it were, and made it a living creature. He is the one who took it to MDV. He is the one who found the writers. He is the one who worked on developing a relationship with directors. I can't tell you how many things he's done to help me with this. And he has shepherded this process through from beginning to end. And to have that kind of help is worth a whole lot. So stand up and let's give him a round of applause.
Right. He did.
Now, I can't see Dan real well. I was hoping you can, because if this thing goes south, there's the man you want to go for. Don't come after me. No, it's not going to go south. It's going to be fine. I've had a chance to. I helped with working with the writers all the way through on the episodes, the scripts, and they were very good about listening to me most of the time. If I suggested something was a bad idea, they were excellent about backing away from it and finding another alternative. I mean, we had a good communicative relationship the whole time. I think that may be not so. That may be more rare than you think. And I've seen the rough cuts of the episodes, and the episodes are terrific. The production values and the acting and the settings and so forth are very, if they're not the same as, they're very close to Lord of the Rings. So you don't see that all that often on television. And I think that you're going to be very, very pleased with the end result. So that's my whole story about my relationship with this project. And if I had it to do over again, I'd say no. No, I would do it in a minute. I would do it in a minute, really.
That's fantastic. I mean, for so many of us, for we fans, the first moment we begin to believe in a project like this is when you see a casting announcement or you see an actor or something. It's a good reminder that that first best moment that reminds you, that puts you in a good mood about the thing, it happens at a far earlier stage.
Yeah, I think you need. I think you know. I mean, I've been around the block on this a few times, and I think you kind of know early on whether a project's going to go somewhere or not go somewhere, whether it's got a fighting chance. And I think you know fairly early on whether you're going to get a good end product or whether it's going to be some half measure. And I felt good about this all the way through. But I have to say, it's small things too that tell you this. But I have to say, coming here for the first time and seeing the reader response, I assume some of you read my books, having people come up to me and say they're very excited about this project and they can't wait to see it, and I'm able to say to them, you're going to love it. You're going to love it. You're not going to feel like you've been cheated. You're not going to think I sold out. You're going to be okay with this whole thing, and some of you are going to love it to pieces. And I don't know that I hear that very often from my fellow writers when they go through this. In fact, I know I don't. I can think of some writers right now who have said, oh my God, I can't believe I let myself get into this. But that is not the case here.
It's fantastic. And yet you wrote on your blog, one moment, yes, you did.
Don't quote me to me.
That's just it. No, but you,
what did I write?
You wrote on your blog about being present on the last day of filming in June, and which sounds like spectacular. You knew the thing was progressing and it was happening as it should. But there was also a tinge of melancholy to what you were saying. I think you had called it something. It began to feel like the end of something in your own life.
Well, yeah, I did, and I wasn't there for the last day of filming, but I knew when it was closing up, and there were. In fact, the writer sent me a picture with some of the cast and so forth, and I think there was a kind of a bittersweet feeling to it because when it's ongoing, you're engaged the entire time, and you're enjoying what's happening, and you can see it. Well, now it's done, so I'm at the same place I was when I finished. When I finish any book, when you're in the book and you're writing it, you're really happy. But when you're done, you sort of, well, that's that, over here, move on to something else. And there's sort of that feeling, I think, here with this first season. It's done. It's pretty much in the can. We're doing final rough cuts on things, and I'm not going to have anything more to do with it other than what I'm doing here right now, which is talking about it.
So, if this is similar, if this is similar to how you feel every time you close down a book, every time you finish a book, it feels like this begins to explain why you've written so many.
Well, it's true, too. This sounds funny, but it's kind of true. For me, writing has always been about the process. I really love writing, and hopefully it shows in the books. So when I'm engaged in the process, I'm really engaged with doing it. But as soon as I'm done with it, I really don't have anything more to do with it. And then it becomes yours. It's your book now. It's not my book anymore. For each person involved, it becomes a special personal experience to read a book and to engage in. And this is obviously true of any book. So I kind of let go at that point, and I don't think, well, gee, I wish I'd done this different, or I bet I could have done that better. I don't even think about it anymore, except when we're discussing a particular aspect of some of it. I'm more interested in saying, well, what am I going to do next? What is the story I'm going to tell next? And I'm there right now. I'm in the middle of Defenders of Shannara, and I've got 2 books out, and the 3rd book's already done, and the publisher has it, and it'll be out next year. So now I'm writing a new series of books, and I'm in the planning stages, and it's more fun. It is so great because anything is possible. You could do anything. You don't have. There are no parameters here. I'm 250 years in the future. I'm thinking, okay, who are the characters and what do I want to write about them and what's important to me that I want to discuss and what's my thematic structure and where's this going to take place? And this needs to be a big sweeping epic. And so many people wrote in and said, I want 600 pages. Well, forget it. So I'm putting all this together now, and so all those possibilities are coming to light, and I'm starting to pick and choose amongst them. And by September, I'll be writing it again, and I'll be happy, and my wife will be happy if I'm happy, and won't you, Judine? Maybe, yeah. So.
Perhaps not as ringing an endorsement as you were expecting, I think.
Well, after many years of marriage, you don't get ringing endorsements anymore. At least I don't. Maybe some of you get ringing endorsements, but no, it's more a case of, well, okay, we understand each other really well, so it's good.
Okay, well, you mentioned the stories you're writing next. If not this crowd, who else would want to know? Can you give a touch of what to expect in this next book that will continue your reign of happiness?
No. Why would I not do that? Because I never discuss something I'm in the middle of writing. I only discuss books when they're done.
This is true. I tried.
It's true.
Go on record
all you're doing is you're talking it to death if you're talking about it, and you don't want to do that. You want to write it before you talk about it. At least that's the way I feel. So it might be different with other writers, but then that's not the way it is with me. I might change my mind. Then what? Then I'll say, but I told all those people it was going to be, this and so. Well, I have to disappoint them, or what am I supposed to do here? So
it's very important to maintain your credibility in this crowd.
Yeah, I don't have much, so I have to really work hard, as you know, with what little I have. It's like working with my good looks, right? Don't say it.
I feel I'm being set up. I've never been more scared in my life than I was just at that moment. Fantastic. Should we...
No, please.
I was going to say, should we take some questions? Because I think some folks are probably intrigued.
Well, if there's questions, yeah, I'm here to answer them mostly.
I thought. Sir in the blue.
So how was it odd seeing something you created in the 80s get recreated now, especially in terms of how you imagined the characters back then and then how you're imagining?
Well, there's a couple things to say about that. I am not the kind of person. This is very interesting because one of the first questions you always get is, who do you see playing a certain character? That question gets asked all the time. And I'm always at a loss because I always have to say, I actually don't have any preferences for who plays the characters. I am not looking for a particular style, type, look, whatever, for most of the characters, because when I write it, I don't write it that way. You may have noticed. There's a lot of latitude in there, because for me, this process of book reading involves you engaging. And one of the things I want you to do is imagine the characters yourselves. Well, if I over-explain them, then there's not that much space left for you to work. So I sort of feel that about the movie thing, too. I want them, and when we were talking about this earlier, I said, I really feel this cast should be basically unknown. I don't want to bring in a whole bunch of actors that everybody knows. Now, we have split the difference on that one, but still, the idea is that I like the idea of bringing in somebody who isn't going to be identifiable with some other role. I don't want to bring in Harrison Ford, for example, because right away it's, oh, look, it's Indiana Jones, Remember Indiana Jones? No. I want you to see these characters in these roles and not let them, and that's the way I like to do it, too. So I try to keep that. So that's the short answer. The 80s thing is, I don't remember the 80s real well. I think it was kind of a lost decade is what I kind of remember. I think it was you know, I think I was divorced once, and that, you know, maybe twice. I don't know. At any rate, so I just feel like it's the kind of thing where I don't have any set ideas. When you make a movie, you're giving up a lot because you have to trust the process. We all know the movie isn't going to be the same as the book. Now, why do we know that? Well, because the book, for one thing, is filled with what? Interior monologue. Well, you know what? A movie with interior monologue is a snoozer. We can't have that. You know, they can't be thinking, well, what if I go here and do there? And oh, I'm just thinking about my ear hurts now. And oh, no, you have to have dialogue. Dialogue is what we need. So when you have dialogue, you have to have characters that will carry on the dialogue. And that means you're going to have some new people. You're going to have some changes made. So that's, I bought into that going in, and I was fine with it. And I still think, you know, when you're talking about, it's, you know, it's like, and the other thing I want to say is, that I think is important is when I wrote Star Wars, George Lucas didn't say to me, you know, the Phantom Menace adaptation, he didn't say to me, all right, I want my characters all on the page the same way they are in the movie. I want all those characters there, and I don't want you to change the story at all. No, he didn't say that. He said, you do what you need to do to make the story right. He says, I would like to see you do more with Anakin Skywalker. I would like to see you start it in a different place. I would like to see the whole thing be a companion piece to what I've done with the movie. How enlightened is that? You know, because really, you have to trust the artist to do this and to do it in the right way. And I think that's what we've achieved with this. And so that's a very long answer. I won't give another one like that, I promise.
So your experience playing in someone else's sandbox have made you a little kinder about the conditions about letting other people's play in yours.
Well, it probably has. I think really he taught me a lot about you know, letting go and about how that can in fact result in a much better story or whatever if you do that. And you give some latitude in that regard. And my sister's a playwright, and it's the same thing if you're a playwright. You know, you write the play, but then it gets redeveloped every time it's produced, whether it's by the director or the dramaturg or whoever. And it's by committee, so you know after a while you learn to pick and choose your battles where you think they need to be fought. In this case, I didn't really have too many battles to fight, and most of them I was successful with, so you know, I don't see anything out there that's going to be a problem for anybody.
I don't suppose it would be controversial if I say there's probably a set of people for whom the best thing about The Phantom Menace was Terry's book. Right?
Well, at least it wasn't embarrassing, let's put it that way.
Boy, I hope this isn't on film.
Probably is. I see several phones going back there.
Do we have another question? Over here.
So you said that you had a really positive experience with the Phantom Menace book. I was wondering if you could touch on what kind of experience and what things you learned from the book as well.
Read my book. Sometimes the magic works. I wrote all about the difference between those two, and the trouble with Hook was that I never met anybody that had any power or knew anything, and all I was told was just do it the way we tell you to do it and shut up. And basically, when you get that kind of a thing, it certainly becomes work for hire in a hurry, and then you don't care anymore. But I wrote a pretty decent book. I just felt like that was the wrong approach. You know, I never met Steven Spielberg. I never met anybody in the hierarchy, and I never really interacted in a way that felt real. And I think for an artist, you don't take much away from that experience. So that was the difference. That one was a very hard experience, and I will not go into detail. I just say it was a very hard experience, and the one with writing Phantom Menace was very easy. I wrote that book in 90 days. There was nothing to it. And they gave me everything, every kind of help I could have possibly asked for, and I will never forget that.
I say there are no bad experiences as long as you can learn something from them. So,
well, there is that.
And that's what they say, but I think they're just trying to make us feel better.
Yeah, I think so too. Actually, I learned that if I had a weapon, no, never mind. That's not true.
Some sort of sword, some sort of...
Yeah, some swords.
Yes, sir.
Back when Elfstones came out and I was reading through it for the first time, the Magnum War actually scared the bejeebus out of me as a kid. Can you say in any way whether that feeling of that creature is coming across from what you have seen in the rough footage of the series?
I would say yes. I don't think there's much question about it. the reimagining of something is always tricky business. And obviously, for some people, it's going to be extremely scary. And for others, they're going to say, well, I'm not that scared. But then we say that about everything we see on. You know, Arnold Schwarzenegger doesn't scare me. Well, he maybe a little.
Yeah.
Politically, maybe. As the Terminator, you know, I think that this is things that scare me probably don't scare other people. For example, and I think that's true. I'm still scared of the mole people. I'm still getting over the 50s, for crying out loud. I don't walk, you know, near the edge of sidewalks. You ever seen that
where
movie?
They grab you, yeah.
You walk near the edge of sidewalks, and these things would come up and grab you and pull you down into the ground.
Yeah. I think there were
To this
chuds in
day,
the 80s too.
now that scared the bejesus out of me. I don't remember that. I forgot. So, you know, it's kind of a judgment call on that sort of thing. I felt like they captured they did a good job of capturing the image of the Dag Namor and the character and creating a feeling of fear. So, yes. Yep.
So when you're writing, are you thinking of the emotional response that you're trying to elicit from your
Well, yeah,
author?
you know, I always have a specific emotional response I want from my readers, but I want you to generate it. I don't want to have to do the work. So my job is to put it out there in a way that I think will, you know, cause you to react in the way that I want you to react. And it's something of a tricky business, but you can do it, you know.
Well, you can do it.
Well, I can do it. But I have a lot of practice, too.
There you go.
If I want to make you cry, you're going to cry. No, I'm not going to hit anybody.
No, I'm just saying, this is a little bit. Yes.
The first season is Elfstone's beginning to end. We're not talking about what happens after that. First of all, we need to know there's going to be a second season.
That'd be one of those cart and horse things, I think.
Yeah, if you all tune in and call all your neighbors and friends and say, watch this show, then yeah, there would be another season. But I think
they're good for that.
I mean,
think
we
they'll
got
do
a
that.
lot of there's a lot of things that can happen. So we're chatting about it back and forth, and we'll see where it's going to go and what's going to happen. But we're not ready to talk about it quite yet because there's been no real decisions made.
In the front, yes.
Starting with Elfstone, will you go back and introduce some of the characters from the original Sword of Shannara? And if so, how will you bring them forward to make the two storylines match up?
Well, we don't know. We don't know. We don't know about that. I will say that I have talked to the writers about playing fast and loose with characters and said, I don't care, go ahead. So they have moved a character from one book into this book, different book into this book, and it works fine. I don't have any problem with it. You know, you have to be free. We're talking a 682-page book here, or 582 pages, whatever it is, goes on forever. You know, even in a season show, it's very hard to keep everybody in. So the point is, in some cases, we just said, or the writer said to me, I think this character needs to be held out for next time around, because in a lot of cases you can do that without, you know, changing things around. So we did a little of that, and I thought it was done judiciously, and none of the main characters are missing. So I thought, okay, fine, we're good.
In the back. How many episodes?
10? Thank you. 10.
Spoken with authority. There you go.
I'm sure in the next year we'll do, you know, 13 or 15 or something. Bump it up.
Yes, sir.
When you go through your writing process, how focused are you on the end of the book and the beginning? Do you write the end? Do you know what the end kind of looks like, and you start again from the beginning and work your way down from that?
Well, I always know what my endings are. I'm a big believer that you should always know your ending, and you should write to the ending. So when you start a book, your arc is taking you in that direction. Your character development is taking you in that direction. And I also am a writer who believes that the ending is the most important part of the book. I think endings need to be strong, especially in this kind of fiction. In fantasy fiction, epic fantasy, you need a powerful ending. And if you don't have it, then I think readers notice that. I notice it. And writers who do that do not please me. I really just think that that's a crucial element of good storytelling. And too many books disappoint me when I get to the ending. They build up a promise, they don't deliver on it. And I think that's a problem. And you probably have read some of my work, you feel like, oh, he didn't deliver on that one very well. But that's just the thing that I think I'm always trying to do, and I hope most writers are trying to do.
Yes.
This might be a dumb question, but years ago,
It's a safe space. It's okay.
years ago, my wife played a video game of this book, and it changed the pronunciation of the book that we both kind of turned our eyebrows up. So my question is it Shannara, Shannara, or Shannara?
Well, let me just tell you about that. So, when I started these books, it was Shannara. And I thought, this is a no-brainer, right? Because I was raised in a school that taught phonics. Well, in phonics, you always divide the consonants, and you pronounce each syllable at the break. So it's Shannara. How tough can this be? Well, let me tell you. When I got out there after about after the first book, people were already saying Sword of Shannara. And there are two choices at this point. Either you go on the war path and say, what's wrong with you people? Where's your education? Or, well, there's three choices. Or you write a glossary, so they know how to pronounce it. And again, that's work. So I said, not going to do that. Or three, you let people do it the way they want to. And I always felt like, very much like I was talking about earlier with the books. The books belong to you. They don't belong to me anymore after you buy that book and it becomes your book to read. You should pronounce it the way that feels comfortable to you. I believe that about all the names and everything else. It should be your interpretation and your personal experience with that book. So I just decided to let it go. And I just kept saying Shannara, and everybody else kept saying Shannara. And that went along just fine until the game, but forget that. My son said, I beat that in 3 hours. What else you got? So then when I saw the writers were pronouncing it Shannara, I said, guys, that's not how you say it. It's Shannara. And they said, how do you know that's not how you say it? And I said, well, that's not how I say it. And they said, well, what about your fans? And I said, well, and they said, they all say Shannara, don't they? Hoisted on my own petard, as it were, at that point. So there wasn't much more to do except to just bow out gently and say, all right, you're right. You have to be able to do that if you want to. And they changed it. They said, we like it better this way anyway. So there you go. So here's the deal. If you're talking about the movie or a game or whatever, you can say Shannara. But if you're talking about the books, you should appropriately and properly say Shannara.
Vox Populi gets you every time. Fantastic. Yes, down here.
Do you have a favorite character for Shannara? And are any of the characters based on yourself?
What was the second part of that?
Are any of the characters based on your life? Or who you think you would be?
Well, I don't know. The thing about the favorite character always leaves me sort of at a loss for an answer because, these are all my children. And I created them all and raised them up and sent them out into the world to earn money. And for the most part, they've done pretty well, some more than others. But they are a personal bunch, and each one means something to me because at the time I created them, I had a very close relationship with them. And so it's hard to say. I like them for different reasons, I guess is what I'm trying to say. They mean something to me in the context of the creation of the book or, maybe things that have happened afterwards. Some of them are like, the characters in Elfstones are all extremely popular because that book is extremely popular. And there are lots of kids that are named Amberly out there, and I've met a bunch of them, and they don't seem to hold a grudge, and I'm kind of grateful for that. So I just can't find, I can't find a way of choosing between them You know, I always say the one I'm probably closest to is Ben Holiday in Magic Kingdom, because really he's me, and I wrote him as if it was me, the trial attorney trying to improve his life by buying a Magic Kingdom, and wrote a book that was essentially autobiographical about becoming a writer. But beyond that, it's hard to choose. I mean, even the really, really bad characters, there's some of me in those characters too, because you have to be able to identify with that kind of poor behavior, and I can do that.
Even if it's not a favorite character, is there one in particular that you miss because you've closed the book on them, they've gone on?
My characters have gone
Yes.
somewhere?
Well, you just said you've released them into the wild, and if you're not working,
They're
with
up there
them-
on the shelves.
Exactly.
No, I don't think so. I would be hard. I never think about things like that. I really don't. Doesn't matter to me. Sorry.
Yes.
I've read that you struggle with writing short stories compared to full-length novels. Would you elaborate on that, the difference between the two?
Well, the question about short stories versus novels, and I have said for years I don't like writing short stories, and I think they're stylistically the development of that kind of writing is very different. Two different different skill sets there. For me, long fiction is easy. I like to sprawl all over the place. I like the idea that I can go here and there and kind of find my way along, and I like that. Much better than the idea that I have to write a story in 30 pages, because then I have to decide what to put in and what to take out. And what I do is I end up taking 8 months to write a 400-page book and 6 months to write a 30 to 50-page short story, because I rewrite it and rewrite it and rewrite it, and it still isn't right. And now I'm mad, and I'm invested in this stupid short story. So I usually don't take on short stories as projects for that very reason, that it troubles me to have to spend that much time on something. Although I just wrote actually a short story for Sean for his next Unfettered book that is, in fact, a Magic Kingdom story, and I wrote it in about 36 hours. So you never know, do you?
So if you ever tried to undertake that classic Hemingway challenge of a 6-word story, how much do you think that would cost you in terms of sort of rage and time?
I'm quite sure I could write a good 6-page story, 6-word story or 6-word title in 12 hours. Maybe.
In the center here, yes.
You expressed quite a bit of flexibility with your stories, that once they're done with. Are there any specific elements that you do feel really possessive or really protective over once it is done, even to the very end?
Well, do not mistake my largesse here for something other than what it is. I'm willing to let you fiddle around with it all you want to in your own private mind. However, I don't let anybody mess with my work once it's out there. There's not going to be any rewriting of my work. There's not going to be any Stephen King-ish stuff where we go back and do it better the second time. We're not doing anything like that, because once it's done, that's it, and it doesn't get changed. And I'm very protective about my books, and that's why it's taken me all this time probably to get this TV show thing or even a movie thing over at Warner Brothers to come to fruition. Because if I don't like the people I'm dealing with and I don't trust them, then I don't want them near my stuff. I'm like that, I always say the same thing, that all my report cards say does not play well with others. And there's a certain truth in that. I do feel strongly that I don't want people messing with my work. So I guess there's the two different types of things. But as far as how other people interpret the stories or so on, really that's what I'm writing them for. That's your prerogative, and I don't have a right to tell you how you should respond to something that I've done. I hope for the best, really. What do you want, Sean?
Can you give an update on the Landover movie?
An update on Landover? Well, Landover has been, floundering around over at Warner Brothers for about 3 years now, and we've had a couple sets of writers come and go. We have a new writer now who I like a lot and I have faith in. Steve Carell is still attached to the project and seems to be willing to hang in there with me while we try and get this thing developed to the point where it could be perhaps greenlit and made into a movie. So I think that there's a fairly decent chance that will happen sometime in the next couple of years. If not, we move on.
Yes, sir.
So I have thought of ideas for books as beginning, middle, and end. But when I try to write it down, it's always so much shorter than I imagined it. And if I get past the beginning, I get to the middle and the end, it's only like 10 pages long. Any advice for like elongating it?
Yeah, how old are you? Okay, good for you. You're at the right age to start this. The thing of it is it takes a long time to get it down and get it right. It took me a long time. I don't know any writer who immediately, well, with one exception, that was able to immediately advance at a very early age into the ranks of publishable writers. I had to learn all about not just writing about the actions that take place, but writing about setting, emotional responses, all of the things that go into developing a story. That's something that you learn by doing. And I don't know if it was Ray Bradbury or another one of the science fiction writers that said, you write 1 million words, throw it away, and you're ready to go. And I think that's basically true. You just have to stay with it, try some things. And the thing of it is you can see yourself progress. You know, if you write this year and when you're 14 you write another story, you'll be better. You'll see it. You'll see it because you'll learn. And I think that's the first thing. The second thing is you need to read a lot. You need to read. This is what we do as writers when we're not writing is we read. This may come as a huge shock to MTV, but that's what I do. And it's not likely to change anytime soon because that's what I really enjoy. And those are the kinds of stories that really impress me and teach me and energize me and make me want to get out there and write something as good. So I think it's just, you just keep at it. That's what you have to do. You know, it's like brick building to a certain extent. You get better with building those bricks the more time you put into it.
1 million words or 10,000 hours is another way some people look at it.
10,000 hours sounds good, yeah. That could work too.
Can I ask, what's your name?
Mitchell?
My name is Nikhil Gupta.
Nikhil Gupta. Everyone hear that?
He'll be out.
You're gonna look for him in a couple years on your
Right.
bookshelf. Preferably at a Barnes & Noble. Anyone else? Down here in front.
I was curious to what your thought process was when you were developing the magic of the Wish Song, and how you developed the magic of the Ohmsford family.
Well, again, this began in the 80s. So my brain is a bit fuzzy on this, but I shall attempt to reconstruct history for you. And you can believe it or not, as you choose. I think that one of the things I knew early on about writing in series was that I didn't want to write a series where the same characters came back over and over again. Because I always said, could Tarzan really have all those adventures, you know, and not be dead? Could, you know, how much can anybody take before they've been beaten to a pulp and they no longer can function? You know, you break enough bones and you're not going to just leap up and go back like things were all right. Plus, I got bored easily. Still do. So, you know, after I've written about someone, I'm done writing about them. So I thought generational sagas were best, and I would skip ahead in time, and that way I could reinvent my characters and the families and the worlds, very much the way Faulkner did, and something I learned from him. So in the process of doing that, you think about the way that magic evolves. And it was clear to me after Elfstones that Will Ohmsford was in bad shape. He had used the Elfstones one too many times at least, maybe more, and his body was infected. And he was in, you know, so what was I going to do with him? And killing him off just didn't seem right. And I thought, well, I could skip ahead, but what I really wanted to do was show the immediate effect of you know, overusing magic in the wrong ways too many times, even in a good cause. So that became the impetus for the development of the Wish Song. And that in turn has developed over the years through the different families in different ways. The Ohmsford families, the Leahs, they have now become bearers of that genetic imprint, and so they now have, some of them have the use of the Wish Song, but it doesn't work well for all of them. For some of them it works very badly. And I just think that's part and parcel of my concept about magic. And my concept of magic is like science. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good, and sometimes you don't know what it's going to be, because it's likely to work in different ways. And I've always thought of them as flip sides of the same coin. I've been writing this story for however many years, 40 years, and it's all been heading towards a resolution between science versus magic. How is that going to shake down?
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Anyone? Yes, in the corner.
What's your favorite book and who's your favorite author?
Yeah, I hear that when you're not writing, you're reading. I'm so gonna get hit.
No, that's fair enough, you know. No, I do not read my own work over and over again. I don't read my own work at all once it's done. I will go back and read the last book or two sometimes when I'm going ahead to write a new story that relies on the previous history, but I'm not very big on saying, I think I'll go back and see how wonderful I was a couple of years ago and look at this great prose, will you? I don't do that. Yeah. I tend to read outside my field, actually, quite a bit. I read probably what everybody else reads, lots of different things, a lot of fiction, a lot of nonfiction. I don't know if I have a favorite writer. I have been reading, let's see, I've been reading a lot of young adult fiction lately. I've kind of gotten interested in that. There's a couple of those writers here at this convention, as a matter of fact. I've been reading Paolo Bacigalupi. I think he's quite good. Like his work a lot. Pierce Brown and I are going to be on stage tonight. I like what he's done with Red Rising and Golden Sun. I think he's excellent. I don't know, anything that looks interesting. I've probably read everybody at least one book, kind of thing, just because you want to see. Even if it's a writer that you don't think you're going to really like, it pays to do a little reading of that writer to see, if you can, why are they so popular? What is it about them that makes them so popular? So yeah, I've read Dan Brown, I've read Twilight, I've read all those bits and pieces of that.
How many pages, how many words, how many chapters will you give somebody to give it a shot?
2.
2 pages?
No, 2 words.
Oh, phew.
No. I don't know. I think you tend to read at least a chapter and see how it's developing and so on. And sometimes I read things that people are just appalled by, but then I read them and I think, well, it's not so bad. It's a pretty good story there. Maybe not the greatest use of language in the world, but the point is not everybody likes the same thing, which is what keeps us all in business. You may have noticed. So we write a lot of different things and a lot of different opportunities there. And I read Cormac McCarthy, but then I had to get therapy. And Daniel Woodrell. There's some terrific writers out there, and you can find them as well as anybody else. I like reading unusual books. I had a bookseller a while back start in on me about this book called Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk, and I thought, that sounds stupid. Well,
it does, but
it does, but it's an amazing story. It's probably the best story I've ever read about the Iraqi War, and it was. It's actually not about the war. It's about the effects of the war on a vet and his company who come back after a tour of duty, and they're feted and treated as heroes because they survived a firefight, and they're brought into the Dallas Cowboys football stadium for halftime at Thanksgiving. Let me tell you, it is riveting. And I thought, this is exactly, I know, without even having been there, that he got it just right. Guy named Ben Fountain. Anyway, things like that, unexpected treasures that are out there that somebody tells you, try this. It's just an amazing thing. And lots of times I think, I don't think I'm going to like that.
That's one. You just described the joy of book selling. That's what keeps everybody I work with, keeps us going, to the idea that moment might happen.
Indeed, yeah. Well, I married a bookseller, and that helped a lot because she taught me a lot about the way in which the book-selling business works, and the R words, remainder, rendering, things like that.
Of course, I work in ebooks now, and none of that happens.
Yeah, none of that happens.
So
It just gets delete, whatever.
we prefer archive.
So I
That's
think
just an aside.
I think that gave me some insight, and she reads a lot, and she makes a lot of recommendations to me, and we have a book club, so we get suggestions from there, and in the course of things, in the course of human events, you get a lot of books you want to read that you didn't expect you were going to want to read. That, and I get sent about 4 million books a year to read by people. So if you want some extra books, I got them.
It's a courageous invitation there. I think we have time for maybe a couple more. On the side, yes.
So I've been reading it since I was like 12. It's sad to imagine even a woman drink the same whiskey that I didn't know as a 12-year-old girl. So I've been putting in all my years of practice. I finally sold a fantasy series that's coming out next year. And
Very
I
good.
wondered if you could have any advice that you wanted to give somebody just starting out.
Oh, Terry, what?
Let's see.
If you could tell your younger self something right now.
Get paid up front.
Yeah?
No, I think probably the kind of advice I give is you have to be patient. It's a process, and it takes time. And you have to be patient with yourself, with your writing. You have to be patient with readers finding their way to your work. You have to, and you also have to keep writing. You have to write all the time. You really do. If writing isn't the most important thing in your life, and that's a bold statement, I know, because people say, well, I got a husband and kids. What are you talking about? But I'm saying as far as what you do with your life, writing has to be the most important thing, because it really is a full-time job. It takes a lot of time and effort. And so I sort of feel like that is, talk to other writers. I mean, other writers know some stuff. They do. And they're very good about sharing. This is a very, very open and friendly community. And you can get a lot of help from going to conferences and going to things like this, where you can talk to other writers and ask them about what they're working on, or what you talked about you're working on. And I think that's part of the joy of this. What was that?
What was what?
Anyway, that would be my advice, I guess.
So, okay, a life of a new writer is work. There's a lot of things, but just to inspire a little bit, what's a joy she has to look forward to? Aside from being at Comic-Con, of course, because it doesn't get better than this.
Right. Fortunately, it does. I should elaborate, but maybe I shouldn't elaborate. I don't know. I like the involvement with people, although it may not seem that way. I do. I like talking to people about what they're reading, and it's often like our young friend down here, Nick, about writing and what they're working on and what they're attempting to do. And I think that's very, very encouraging to you as a writer to know that there's that big community out there constantly swelling the ranks. And I like all of that part of it probably as much as anything else. But for me, I take great joy in my writing, doing it. I take great joy in the process. I'm not a happy person when I'm not writing. You can talk to my family. They will be happy to tell you that this is very true. If he's not writing, we don't want him around. And I just am like that. I'm just a much better person when I'm working. And I suppose it wouldn't even matter if I was publishing as long as I was doing the work, because I would feel like accomplishing something that was important to me at least. And it just is an added benefit when other people like your work that well.
Charles Scribner Jr., I think, who wrote 2 memoirs of his life in publishing, and one was called In the Company of Writers, and one was called In the Web of Ideas.
Yeah.
And those are 2, there's no better description of what this world can give you.
Yeah.
It's why we bother.
Yeah, I think for a writer, that's true. Yeah.
Sure. I think we probably have time for one more question. So who's got the best of all possible questions? The Candide of questions. The best of all possible questions. In the corner, no pressure.
It's not actually a question. Just wanted to say, I've been reading you for 25 years, and I found you in South Africa, and my imagination is there because of you. So thank you.
Wow. Thank you very much. That's very nice. I know. I tell her, my wife says, you have the world's best fans. You don't know how lucky you are. And she's right. I do. I have, you know, the people I talk to, I've never had a bad experience in almost 40 years with anybody, anywhere. Never. And not all writers can say that. And everybody is incredibly nice and pleasant. They have good things to say. What more can you ask for in a profession than that? You're going to tell me, aren't you?
Great writer. You say nice things instead of asking questions. I was going to say, I read you when I was in high school, and obviously you were writing a little bit more beyond that side, behind my few books, but I think to share with your kids and doing it over generations.
Well, I like that too. And you know, as a writer, you don't plan. I don't know if you heard that or not, but she was saying the sharing with your children, or if you're a child, sharing with your parents or grandparents or whatever with the books. That's something that, you know, you don't plan as a writer. You don't sit down and say, well, I'm going to write a book that everybody in the family is going to love, and they're going to pass this book around and talk about it and so on. It doesn't work like that. It only works if they do it later and you discover that that's true. But what a gift. For me to be able to still be here this long has a lot to do with the fact that those books do get passed from generation to generation. And I still see the writers at 60 and 70 years of age that I started out with. And now I see their children and their grandchildren and so forth also reading these books. And that gives me a tremendous amount of pleasure. And I don't know too many writers that are able to share that.
It's true. It is cruel that the time-space continuum only lets you experience something for the first time once. But sharing it with your kids for the first time is an acceptable substitute.
Well, I just want to thank you all for coming. Coming here to the convention and coming to see me.
Thank you so much. Are you doing an autographing or another panel later? Are you
Yeah.
autographing?
Yeah, I am doing an autographing somewhere. Area 53 or something?
Area 51.
Yeah, Area
with the
51. Back over at the autographing section there at the...
So if you want to continue this conversation, and you know you do,
Yeah.
you can hunt Terry down in the autographing area.
Well, the other thing is Pierce Brown and our editors and myself at 7:30 tonight will be at room 4 over at the convention center talking about generational gaps between writers then and now and editors then and now, and what we've learned or not learned or whatever, and sharing thoughts about that and taking Q&A from the audience too. If you're interested in that, you should come over and sit in on that for an hour. And of course, we hope you'll all show up for the panel at MTV tomorrow at 12:30, which will be in rooms D, E, and F or something like that.
There'll probably be some numbers, and of course, they'll probably talk a bit about that other thing.
We will talk about a lot about the other thing. We will show a trailer of that has been put together on the show. We will have the actors, 3 or 4 of the actors, maybe 5, I can't remember now, on stage to talk to you. The writers will be there. At least one director will be there. It'll be a good opportunity to find out from those people what their take is on all this, so you can find out if I'm lying or not.
So you know where you're going to be. I want to thank Terry for this, spending this time with us. I want to thank all of you for coming out with us. I hope you have a fantastic Comic-Con. But whatever you do, please just read a book. Thank you very much.